Hello, everybody. Quiz review for polars, which is activities 28 and 29. There are 16 questions on the quiz. Those 16 questions contain, there's some graphs, there are 3 true and false, and there's 1 multiple choice. You will be asked to draw the graphs. You'll be asked to draw 3 graphs. The first question, definitely on there. You'll be given a point, which you are going to be asked to write in several ways. You'll be asked to write 3 more names for that exact same point. I always like to draw the graph, or at least develop some sort of relationship between the angle that you are given and the x-axis, whether it's the positive or the negative x-axis. 105, whoops, so sorry, that's not 105. Let's get to 105. 105, which is 75 degrees away from the x-axis. If you draw it all the way through, this angle, which is 75 degrees away from that axis, is 285 degrees. So there's some numbers that we'll be using, obviously the 2 and the negative 2. So the point that we're actually graphing, if we go to 105 and then think about negative 2, is actually this is the point we're graphing. So let's first give that the easiest name we have, which is 2, positive 2, positive 285 degrees. Another pretty easy name is 2 and negative 75 degrees. So we just need 1 more, and the one we're missing is negative r and negative theta. So what we have to do is think about how many degrees would we need to go from the 0 down and around to get to 75. Well, that's going to be 180 plus 75, so that is going to be negative 255. So remember, when you're doing this, you want to come up with all the possible combinations. Positive r, positive theta. Negative r, positive theta. Positive r, negative theta. And negative r, negative theta. Those are in no particular order, but those are the 4 categories of points you're looking for. For number 2, the rectangular coordinates, we're looking for x, y. So x is going to be negative 4 times the cosine of 210, and y is going to be negative 4 times the sine of 210. Or you can use the keys on the calculator. It says round to 2 decimal places, so we get 3.46 for x, and you get exactly 2 for y. For polar, you can use the keys on the calculator. Again, those are located at second apps. Make sure you pick the correct rectangular to polar. Make sure you pick polar to rectangular, or make sure you're paying attention to that because there are 4 choices there. So for this, we're looking for r and theta. So r is going to be the square root of 7 squared plus 13 squared. That is 14.76. And theta is the inverse tangent of negative 13 over negative 7. So they'll both be positive. When you think about this coordinate, negative 7, negative 13, it's in the 3rd quadrant. The calculator gives you negative 118.30 degrees. You got to add 360 to that to get the positive angle. Unless, of course, you're told specifically to give a negative angle or to give a negative r, unless you're told to write that point in a different way. So the answer would be 14.76, and then the angle is 241.70 degrees. All of this, all 3 of those questions are on the quiz. Now, for your graphs, you have your calculator. You'll be able to look at your calculator. This is negative and it's sine, so that means sine is up and down. Means that our diameter is 5. And we would be left and right 2.5. you would certainly be able to use your calculator to get that correct. I feel like I'm not quite in the right spot. And draw your circle. The rectangular coordinates or the rectangular form of this circle. So the center is at 0, negative 2.5. We know the radius is 2.5. So we have x squared plus y plus 2.5 squared equals 2.5 squared, which is 6.25. Theta equals 150. Well, here's your 180. So it's this line right here. This is the line. Theta equals 150. Taking the tangent of both sides. Tangent of theta equals tangent of 150. This is y over x. Tangent of 150 is negative radical 3 over 3. When you're writing the equation of these lines, you cannot have a decimal. So we get 3y equals negative x radical 3. And so y equals negative x radical 3 over 3. For r equals 3, we're going to go out to the third circle. And of course, that means every single angle. So it is the circle right on top of that third radius, or that third arc all the way out. And then our center, of course, is 0, 0. X squared plus y squared, and if the radius is 3, then this equals 9. Now on the quiz, there is one problem like those two. You will not see that r equals 3 on there. Number 7, 8, 9, there's only 2 of these on the quiz, but we've got all 3 of the kinds here to sort of practice on. These are the 3 kinds that we have done over and over again. We've got the plane circle. Number 8, of course, is either a horizontal or vertical line. And number 9 is a line that's not running through the origin and is not horizontal or vertical. So when you have a circle, which is what number 7 is, or when you cannot cross multiply, like you can in number 9, to get the r, the goal is to have the r with the sine and the cosine. We have to multiply both sides by r. You are going to just have to be able to recognize this. And so we would get r squared equals 5r cosine theta plus 6r sine theta. R squared, of course, gets taken out and replaced with x squared plus y squared. R cosine is x, R sine is y, so now we have 5x and 6y. If you couldn't tell it was a circle before, now you should be able to, because you have 1x squared plus 1y squared. Same coefficients, plus sign in between the x and the y squared. So when you have a circle, you're going to have to complete the square. So let's get the x family together. So x squared minus 5x will complete the square here. Then the y's would be y squared plus 6y, and of course you have to complete the square for them. And the other side is blank. Half of 5 is 2.5, or 5 over 2 if you'd rather do it as a fraction. So we're going to add 6.25 to both sides. Half of 6 is 3, 3 squared, of course, 9, and then add 9 to both sides. The rule is letter, first sign, number, u squared, squared on the outside, plus letter, first sign, number, u squared, and of course we just add this up on the other side, 15.25. This is the rectangular form of that circle. For number 8, got writing everywhere. Secant, we don't really have anything with secant in it, so let's think about what this means. This is saying -4, and then secant, if you shove it to the bottom, becomes cosine. Now we have 2 fractions, and you should cross multiply. So we get r cosine theta equals -4. Well, you're solving, you're trying to make this into your x, so r cosine theta is x, and we end up with just the plain old line, x equals -4. Now for number 9. Put that over 1, you can cross multiply. Now when you cross multiply, make sure you distribute because the r really is on the outside of the entire quantity that's in the denominator. Other way we get -3. Remember, when you cross multiply, fractions are gone. So 2r cosine theta minus 4r sine theta equals -3. Again, remember, we are trying to get rid of r and theta and put in x and y. R cosine is x, r sine is y. 2x minus 4y equals -3. And I know I've always asked you to solve for y. You do not need to solve for y on the quiz. You can if you want to, but you're more than welcome to stop there. Especially if you think time might be an issue or really anything else, or if you just don't want to. I'm good with that. We can just leave it in that form. Polar form of a rectangular curve. Not a lot of space here. Sorry about that. That's not a good idea. There are 2 of these on the test quiz. Sorry, I can't figure out why this is not black anymore. Okay, so for y is really r sine theta equals -15. Still bugging me. I don't know how I changed it. All right. So then we're trying to get r by itself. So when you divide both sides by sine theta, you get r equals. Now you can't have a fraction. And so instead of saying sines in the denominator, that really is cosecant if we pull it out from underneath there. For number 11, take out the x, 3r cosine theta. Take out the y, plus 5r sine theta. This equals 7. This, of course, is a line, as we knew from the very beginning. And the line, the trick is to factor. So these both have an r, so we're going to factor that out, because the goal is to have the letter r written one time. 3 cosine theta plus 5 sine theta is now inside the parentheses, equals 7. You divide both sides by this quantity. So we're left with r equals 7 over 3 cosine theta plus 5 sine theta. Now for number 12, we really don't have a lot of space here. Having coefficients in front of the x squared and or the y squared is no good. So I'm going to take this 3x squared and make that x squared plus x squared plus x squared. And then, of course, we have y squared, and then 4x. X squared plus y squared, that is r squared. Now, we still have 2 of these x squareds. And really, you can put them back together. So the only reason we took it apart was so that you could have a visual and take care of one of the x squareds. So this is good. So what I'm going to do is, this is really 2x squared. The 2 is not squared. So the 2 stays there. But when we put in r cosine, then r gets squared, cosine gets squared, and of course theta does not get squared. So I'm just trying to show you what I've got going on here. So this is going to become 2r squared cosine squared plane theta. The 2 is not squared. There's 2 x's, so there's 2 of these r squared cosine squareds. And then, of course, the x here is another cosine theta. We have no y. This is weird. Okay, so sorry about that. Got distracted. So this is going to be 4r cosine theta equals 0. Well, the trick is to divide everything by r. And so now we have 2r cosine squared plus r plus 4 cosine theta. So this guy doesn't have an r, so he gets kicked out. So this is now going to equal -4 cosine theta. I'm trying to make this take up a little bit less space. The left-hand side, they have an r in common, so we're going to factor that out. So 2, the cosine is still squared, and r divided by r is a 1. Then we divide by that quantity. So r is negative 4 cosine theta over 2 cosine squared, plus 1. You cannot simplify that. Do not try to work out and reduce the 4 and the 2 because the 1 doesn't allow for it. Don't try to change the words or cancel any words. That is finished. All right, now this little section, there's clearly not this many, but there are several places where you're asked for symmetry, and then you're asked for names. So these are not this way on the quiz. This is information that's on the quiz. It's just not set up this way. So you might be asked about symmetry separate from names, which is maybe included in a graph, which is maybe included in some other sort of wording or application. So for number 13, this is a circle, and it has symmetry with respect to the x-axis. 14 is a limacon, and we have A larger than B, so this is no loop, which you do not have to include. You can just stick with the limacon. And then, of course, this has symmetry with respect to the y-axis. 15, they match, so this is a cardioid, like that. And then this has got cosine in it, so this has symmetry with respect to the x-axis. 16 is a rose because of the 4. Also because of the 4, it has symmetry with both the x and the y axes, both of them. 1 plus 5, this is 2 different numbers, so this is a limacon. This one has a loop. Include that or not. Sine means it's symmetry with the y-axis. And 8, finally, this one is a rose. And because of the odd n, then you can have to look at the word. And since the word is sine, this has symmetry with the y-axis. Now, 19 and 20, there are 2 questions like this on the quiz. But on the quiz, it is from a picture, not from the words. So if you are given the graph, you will be asked to write the equation very specifically for that graph. So when you're doing it that way, the signs matter. A negative sign changes the graph. Here we don't really know the graph, like exactly. Is it supposed to be oriented with the 90 degrees or is it supposed to be oriented with 180? So it's a little bit hard to see if there is a reflection because you can't see it. So we're just going to go based on the patterns that we know. So this is a rose, so this is R equals. It's symmetry with the y-axis, so we know we're going to use sine. It has 3 petals. The number of petals is odd, so we don't change it. And the length of each petal is 1. So you can put a 1 in front of the sign if you want to. That's, of course, optional. You could also use the negative. You could write R equals negative sine of 3 theta. Both have symmetry with the y-axis. They do not have symmetry with the same number, the angle degree, but they do have symmetry with the y-axis. Number 20, we've got a cardioid, symmetric to the x-axis. You need to pick 2 numbers that match. Are you going to go with 2 and 2? It is sine because it's, it's cosine. I don't know what happened to me. And then theta. You can add, you can subtract. You could have 3 plus or minus 3. You can make it negative 3. They can both be negative. They can both be positive. You can use 5s. You can use 1s. It's up to you, but the numbers need to match. The signs can be anything, and you have to use the word cosine. Now for 21, there are 2 of these kind of graphs. And there are no questions about state the interval for which the graph can be traced once, so we're not going to bother with that. So for number 21, remember with these graphs, you may or may not be asked for the name, you may or may not be asked for their symmetry. make sure that you graph enough so that you can draw it. I don't know how many that is, but your graph does need to be exact. And so also I would stick with some hints here. I would graph the ones that are easy and then go back and fill in the ones that are maybe not too easy. So we have 0, -2. So that shoots it away from the 0. 30, -3. That's going to shoot this away from the 30. Here's your 30. 90, -4. Now, from there, because you understand the symmetry, you can just use that to help you figure out how to graph it. So you can see that, well, on the calculator it says 150, -3. So there's that point. And then, of course, we would have 180, -2. You are going to need some numbers that give you the correct, I'm going to call it lump there, or above the, oh, I feel like this is wrong. That's the one that's wrong, sorry. And you're going to need to give the correct height of that, kind of that hump there from 0. So 210 is actually at -1. So this is 210, and so that will be helpful, and so you can see it's going to be over here as well. And so that, I would think, would be enough to draw the graph of this cardioid. Do your best to not draw it pointy at the bottom, because it is not pointy. Remember, it's a circle. Now, this is a limacon and has an inner loop. And so we've talked about the patterns with this. We have the point 0, 1. When you subtract these, that's the space of the inner loop. And when you add them, that's the space of the outer loop. So 1, so that's going to be a 3 right there. That is the point 180. We have 60, 0. So there's where your 0, 0 comes in. 90, -1, so it's going to go up 1. 120, -2. So that's going to be, sorry, I lost track of what I was doing. Not there. So 180, -3. Back to where we already have it. 240, -2. So we should be getting some other points here. For some reason I'm not able to count. We have another 1. And so we're able to draw this graph. There you go. A little bit hard to see. Zoom in, maybe that's a little bit better. All right, now for this last one, this is a rose. Remember the rose? Make sure that you have the petals correct length, located on the correct angle line. This is the only graph of these that's 0 to 180. The others are 0 to 360, if you did that part. So we can see where the petals are. They're straight to the right, so that's going to be 0, 4. Oops, it helps if you have something to write with. On 120, it's going to be at 4. And at 240, it's going to be at 4. And at 15 and 45, we're dealing with 2.8. So some of them are positive and some of them are negative. So I guess I want to look at 15 and -15, or 15 and 315. Sorry, not 315, 345. But I'm going to use -15 just because it's in where I'm looking. It's a little bit easier. So this is going to be 2.8. And right above it is 2.8. So now we know exactly one space on either side. It goes 2.8, which is pretty easy to sort of fill in. And And when you draw your graph, remember, draw your graph as best as you can to try to get all of these things looking good. So that's everything that's on the quiz. Any questions at all, just please feel free to stop by during E&I or before class.